Hey there, I'm coming to you live. I'm trying to do this more regularly. Thank you guys so much for joining in my poll yesterday. It was very interesting to see how many business owners, especially in our spa industry, who are not paying themselves, as well as people who can understand where I'm coming from when I said I made $4 an hour. And in making that $4 an hour kind of is what got me to where I am. The reason I wanted to share that is because a lot of us really assume when we graduate from beauty school and we become estheticians, nail techs, massage therapists, hairstylists, that we really have to come out making a whole lot of money. And the reason I tell everyone to really, once you get your license, go work for someone and kind of get that on-the-job training, my expectation with the on-the-job training is that I'm not going to be paid a whole lot. And so my $4 an hour was the catalyst that allowed me to understand, one, the industry, and two, that I needed to make more money, right? $4 an hour for me equaled $32 per day, regardless of, I was on commission, so I didn't quite understand the commission structure. The $4 an hour was, it was eye-opening for me because I came from an $80,000 job and I made really good money to getting a $320 check, which equaled $4 an hour. So working 80 hours, I made $4 an hour, making or 80-hour work week, so 2-week period. That check was $320, and that was before taxes. So I really only made 200 and whatever amount by the time the taxes came. And I really love the fact that I can go back and say that $4 an hour was what kind of catapulted me into the industry to understand, one, how to pay myself, how to charge correctly, how to earn the hourly rate that I so deserved. But it also allowed me to see what I liked in the industry and what I didn't like in the industry. Because I do think that when a lot of people come out of beauty school, they have this vision of what they're going to do and who they're going to be. And it really doesn't match up, because typically when you go for a job, they're really wanting you to have a specific skill set, right? I went for a job that allowed me to have multiple skill sets at the same time. I was the only esthetician, so I didn't have any competition as far as having to share clientele. I also had to understand hair and nails because that's what was a part of my retail. I was able to work with multiple lines in the back bar, and all of that on-the-job training came with the price, right? Did I think I would make $4 an hour? Absolutely not. What my goal was to get into a location where I was the only esthetician. I got 100% of my tips. But that job was a job that you will never see. I made 50% commission. I had full benefits. So I had full medical, full dental. I did 4 10s. So I worked 4 10-hour shifts. I did Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I had 3-day weekends every weekend. So it was the perfect job for me at the time of my life. But I didn't realize until I got my first paycheck that I really only made $4 an hour. So like I said, coming from an $80,000 job where I made $80,000 a year, so I brought home every 2 weeks between $1,500 and $2,000, to go to $320. Not only did it shock me, it depressed me, but it made me understand that, we as workers, right? People who provide services with their hands, we really don't quite understand that part. I knew I had to do on-the-job training for so long, so I only gave myself a year to really do well. And I did phenomenally well in that job, right? So much so that they sent people to train with me. My $320 went to $2,000 and $2,500 to $3,000. I was getting every pay period. So I obviously started making more than that, especially because I was on 50% commission. I started, having full books. I made $300 and $400 a week in tips. But to say all of that, you have to really kind of understand the beginning is always what's going to set the foundation. If I did not have that foundation, I don't think I would have the drive in the industry that I have now, or I wouldn't have the understanding to help others to know that I completely understand where you're what you're talking about and where you're coming from. Most of the people that I did the poll for yesterday or even asked the question did not make anything close to $4 an hour like I did. I think for the honesty and transparency when it comes to being paid for not only your work and what you're worth, but understanding the bigger picture, you had to learn how to be great when you're not really paid well, right? It's hard to come out of beauty school and expect to make 50% commission, have completely full books, and not really know what you're doing, right? Fast forward to owning my own business, I still did not understand the importance of paying myself first. So what happened is I would pay all of my bills, and then what left over, I would take. So which means I was on a draw. I didn't have anything organized. Sometimes it would be $5, sometimes it would be $50, sometimes it would be $100, but it still was not enough for me to survive on. So when it came down to what is the formula I'm going to use to really pay myself regularly, but then pay myself first, do I have the wherewithal and do I have the things in place that I can structurally say, if I pay myself $100 an hour, this is what it's going to look like. If I pay myself $50 an hour, this is what it's going to look like. So I encourage a lot of folks, especially as business owners, especially before you start hiring employees, that you really understand the importance of paying yourself and then paying yourself first. Not what's left over, but what's first. So for me, in order for me to get over that hump, because it was so traumatizing to think that I would add myself as an expense in the business. I had so much overhead and other things I needed to pay that I felt was more important. So I put myself last. It wasn't until I put myself as a part of the expense that it started changing the way I looked at the business. Because when you take what's left over, you're really taking what's left over. So it could be $100, it could be $5, it could be $50, it could be whatever. There was no real structure. I didn't have any structure, right? And then I thought that my tips would be something that I could survive on. Not to say I didn't make really good tips. That's not the issue. The issue was the tips were just as inconsistent as me taking what was left over. So when I started to realize that I'm not always going to get cash tips, so I can't rely on living off of cash tips, and then I also can't rely on paying myself only $50 or $100 at the end of the week, thinking that that's going to take care of my livelihood. When I say to make yourself a part of your expenditure in your business, that you actually are no different than paying the rent, no different than paying for products, you are paying for your expertise, right? When I wrote my book, I really was very specific on starting off paying myself $5 a day. And the $5 a day and that exercise that I share in my book that I did myself really started changing my mindset. Because it started at $5 a day, it went to 10, 25, 50, 100, 125, 200, blah, 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 down the line. But the reason I paid myself every day was because I knew I was going to have something in my hand every day. And it had to become that physical aspect where I physically would put $5 and put it into my hands and I would go home with it. And then whenever I needed to move it up to $25, to $50, to $100, I paid myself every day because it was psychologically so much easier for me to know that when I got done working, I knew I was going to have $100 in my pocket, or I knew I was going to have $125 in my pocket. So it became very easy for me to mentally work my way into making myself an expense. You said you just got the Skin Biz worksheet. Awesome. It's a great tool, especially for your services, your skincare services, along with your waxing services. Like, that's a tool I think every owner in the beauty industry should have, is the cost per service. Because if you have a service menu and you don't have that cost per service equation to figure out your sticks, if you're waxing, anything you use in that wax service, and then how much you need to pay yourself hourly, it's one of the best tools that I've ever trained with. And I've been training with that tool with a lot of estheticians for the last about 10 years. I share that tool with everyone. So it's at Skin Biz School, or if you go to @Skin Biz School, you can click the link and purchase that cost per service worksheet. It's a phenomenal tool for everyone. It'll never expire. You'll always want to make more hourly. So it'll give you the right number to put onto your service menu and charge for your service. So I always encourage people to really start paying yourself regularly, however you feel comfortable. So whether that's paying yourself daily, paying yourself weekly, every 2 weeks, monthly. I don't really suggest monthly because that's really a discipline that it's not for everybody. But paying myself every day really opened my eyes up to how much I put myself last. And, a lot of people say, what do you mean you paid yourself $5? I gave myself permission to have $5 or $25 or $100, no questions asked. And I even went to the extent of getting it in cash just so that it was in my hands. Like, it was such a it really opened my mind in a completely different way because, some business gurus will say, write yourself a check. I really wasn't that because I know my relationship to money. And I know that if I was giving myself cash, it was mine. I didn't have to cash a check. I didn't have to deposit a check. I literally put cash into my own hands for my psychological well-being. And the more cash I kept putting into my hands, the better I started feeling about what I was doing. Because again, when you're stressed out, when you're doubtful, when you don't have a great place that you're coming from and you're working on clients, working on clients itself takes a lot of energy. And when you're worried about money, it can come across in a really different way and it can come across very desperate. And that's something that I forced myself to work on by literally putting money into my pocket every day. So I knew when I was coming into work that I was going to take $100 out and have $100 cash every single day. Now let's add that up. Even if we did a 5-day work week, that's $500 a week, which is way more than what I was paying myself when I was taking last after I paid all my bills. So by me forcing myself to every day, and I even got to the point where before I even started my first client, I would already have $100 in my wallet. It completely changed the way I interacted, not only with my clients, but how I focused on the business and took care of things that needed to take care of. But that I saw that my whole demeanor was completely different. When I was paying myself at the end of the day, it was very different than paying myself as soon as I walked into the door. Because as soon as I walked into the door and I had that $100 ready to go into my wallet, it changed my entire perception of my business. It changed my demeanor. It changed how I act with the client. It changed how my attitude was being there. It wasn't an attitude like, oh, I'm going to get paid at the end of the day. No, it was like, I've already gotten paid. So now I can really focus on what I need to because that part's already taken care of. So it was really such a mind issue with me because my money issues were so mental, right? So in order for you to get yourself there, if you know you have a money issue, if you know that the money will change your attitude and your disposition, why not reward yourself? So when I started paying myself before I even touched a client, my whole business changed because my demeanor changed, my attitude changed. I wasn't working for the money at the end of the day. I already had the money. So now I need to do everything that I need to do for the business. You see how that flipped? And the thing about me sharing that, especially sharing it in the book, was I started off at doing $5. And everyone thinks $5 is so, it's not inconsiderate. It's the action of having $5 waiting for you the minute you walk into the door. It's no different than when a client doesn't tip you, especially if you were working at a big salon and you go in the next day and they say, oh, the client came back and gave you a tip, there's your envelope. It changed the disposition of the way I was looking at everything. So when I put myself first, that means that every single day I was giving myself $100, $200 cash. This is what I'm going to take. This is the draw for the day. And I'm going to get it before I even touch my first client. It changed the way I looked at money and my business and my attitude. Because when I wasn't worried about money, everything was great. When I worried about money, that's when everything started to change. And I was not able to hide it from people, the disposition I was in. Like you could read my face that, oh, I'm just here to get a check. Or, oh, I can't wait to get my money and go home. So I was like, let me flip it. I'm going to give myself money every single day. I'm not even going to touch a client yet. And I'm going to have money in my pocket. The discipline came from, how am I going to spend the money? Because that's another part of our money issue, especially those of us who have a lot of cash. The discipline to not spend the money is a challenge, right? It's a challenge because we like cash. we also don't have to be accountable for cash. So if I have $500 or $600 in cash, I don't have to be accountable for how I spend that $500 or $600. So what I really started doing to be forcing myself to be even more disciplined is I didn't spend it. I would hold on to it. And I would do the things that I was supposed to do to take care of the things that I was supposed to do. My tip challenge, which I share in my book as well, I never looked at my tips. I never counted my tips at the end of the day. And I had to do that on purpose because if I knew how much money I had in tips, I would spend it. So I made a tip jar. I got a big old plastic, I can't see through it, jar that I put on it called tip jar. And every day that I got tips, I did not count the cash. I stuffed it in there. I only allowed myself to count my tips twice a month. The first time I did it, I did first and the 15th, I think. So the first of the month, I would take and pay on the credit card. And that's really how I got rid of my credit card debt, was the tip challenge. So whatever bill I needed to pay, I would actually write it onto the jar. I put all of my tips in there. I was only going to count them every twice a month. So I would put all of that money on whatever I needed to pay that bill and pay that bill with the tip money. So it forced me, one, to not count it, and two, be accountable for the debt that I had. Thank you, Terrence. Well, Terrence, you've been a part of my tip challenge. You've done the tip challenge with me about twice, right? Because when I used to mentor and I had a mentoring group, we would do a group tip challenge where everyone once a month would count all their tips up and they would report them to me. They would also say the bill that they were working on. It went so far as to when I closed my mentoring group, one person kept doing the mentoring group and the tip challenge, and she did it for a year and paid off her car. And that was Germa. I don't know if you remember her, Terrence, but Germa kept going with her tip challenge and paid off her car for a year. So the tip challenge allowed me to realize if I don't know how much cash I have, then I'm not going to spend it. So if it's out of sight, out of mind for me, I'm not going to spend it. So I'm going to force myself to save it and then pay off a bill that I needed to pay off. And for me, most of it was credit card debt. And that's really how I got out of debt the first time, was collecting all the cash that I had, putting it out of sight, out of mind, only counting it twice a year, paying those major bills. You said it's been a great addition. You're still doing it. Oh, awesome. That's great, Terrence. I'm so glad that you're still doing the tip challenge. That's one that is completely organic. That's something that I made up myself. No one showed it to me. I never saw anybody do tip challenge. I never really, when you start talking to the money gurus and people who are all about money and, making money and all of that, no one ever talked about tips because it's not talked about in our industry. We don't talk about the importance of tips and how those tips can really get you out of financial bind. We don't talk about the money relationship of knowing cash. Like I even told everyone, don't ever put the cash into your wallet. Get a special envelope that you can't see through. Don't put it in your wallet. Take the envelope if you have to and put that envelope into your jar or your space that's designated just for your tips, and only count it when you're getting ready to pay a bill. It's so psychological that until you do it, just like Terrence is saying, the money adds up and it's really a lot. And it works. Because again, I admit, and I've always admitted that I have money issues. My money is if I have access to it, I'm not going to be accountable to it. I'm just going to spend it. And I'm going to spend it on what I want and not what I need. So when I was on purpose taking in the money and putting it into a place and only counting it when I needed to pay a bill, it again changed the way I looked at my business, the way I looked at money, and how I was becoming more accountable because it wasn't available to me. It was in the back of the closet, in the corner, underneath some things that I literally just put it in there, out of sight, out of mind, closed it up, stuffed it back in there, walked off about my day. So the money tips that I really give are from a place of without, right? I was doing these things when I was making very little money. I was doing these things before I figured out my cost per service and before I was doing my $125 facial, which led to the $250 facial. It was way before any of these things because I didn't really understand the importance of understanding my money relationship. So fast forward now, I do not have a debit card. I don't have debit cards. I don't spend debit cards. For my personal or my business, I don't have access. I don't have easy access to my money. And I do it on purpose because I know that if I have easy access to the money, I'm going to spend it on what I want and not what I need. And then it's harder to be accountable when you just spend it and there's no accountability. When you have a debit card, you don't really need to know what you're spending it on. You just need to know how much you have in it so that you don't go over your limit. That's really it. That's the only accountability you have to it. So for me, it was easier to say, I'm going to cut up my card and not even have a card. So if I need to have cash, I got to go into the bank. Or if I need to spend something, it has to be strategic when I spend it. Because if I don't have the money, I'm not going to get it. That's it. So I wanted to jump on here and talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about my post that I did, the story that I did as well. Those of you who joined in on the poll, thank you guys so much. Those of you who joined in on my post about your first job and how much you made per hour, definitely thank you for joining on that and giving us remarks. Again, I was the lowest. No one made $4 an hour like I did, which is fine. But I do think that always is a life lesson for people who may not realize that even if you're on commission, sometimes it adds up to being less than what you think it is, even in an hourly rate. It's a great thing also for business owners who are looking to have employees. I always say do hourly plus commission, so that way the commission is earned by a tier or sliding scale. If you sell this much, you get this much commission. If you sell this much, you get this much commission. But we're going to give you an hourly rate. The hourly rate is based off of how much they work and not what they bring into the business. So lots of life lessons here when it's a business owner. The biggest one that I've always said, and I say over and over again, is pay yourself first. Even if it's not a lot of money, pay yourself first. You will notice a difference in your attitude, your demeanor, and how you look at your income. If it's stressful for you because you're looking at the lack of what you have, then change it. If you're paying yourself what's left over, change it. If you're not paying yourself at all, change it. Nothing will change until you change it, and then your mindset changes it. Because the way you think about it is going to be very, very different. And people laugh when I tell them, it's in my book. I paid myself $5 a day because it's psychological. It's a psychological thing. Because at 5, I eventually grew into $200 a day. And then by that time, I needed to do payroll because at that time, $200 a day is $1,000 a week. So let's add it up. It adds up, right? And then payroll is a whole different beast that I think everyone, especially if you have some years under your belt, definitely have to go to next. You got to put money in your Social Security. You got to put money in your disability. You got to put money into your Roth IRA or your 401k, depending on how you have it set up through the business. Like those are the next steps to understanding and being accountable for your money. Okay? All right. If you have any questions, you can always post below. I'm going to share this onto my IGTV where I have all the other conversations that I have on. You can definitely still comment in my post that I posted yesterday about how much you made on your first esthetician job. And then my poll is over, but I'm going to do another poll tomorrow. Okay? All right, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.